Hello, everyone. Welcome back to day number 3 of our Cybersecurity Awareness Month tips and tricks. And today's topic is two-factor authentication, what it is and why you need to put it on everything. So this is a pretty big topic, and hopefully we won't spend too much time boring you with it, but I cannot stress the importance of this one tip, and that is enable two-factor authentication everywhere that you possibly can. So what is two-factor authentication? Well, it's a really good question, and it's really, really simple. It's math. That's all. It's just math. So basically what it is some type of application is going to take a base code in the current time of day that you're entering the code in, and it's going to generate a little passkey from 6 to 10 digits that you need to type in, and it'll be able to authenticate. Now, what's cool about this is that even if the bad guys get that code and know exactly the time of day that you entered it, they're not going to be able to regenerate the base key, which means that they are not going to be able to then generate future keys down the road as you would with your application. So it's a really, really tremendously safe way of verifying who you are with just a little bit of encumbrance of what you usually do, because it is a second password that changes every 45 seconds to every minute. Now, the way you usually do this is you go to the website. Now, some of them are going to actually mandate that you have two-factor authentication. Banks are doing this. Credit card companies are starting to do this. Account management, a lot of these companies are starting to do this because they want to make sure that you're protected. It also protects them, so if their databases ever get kind of hacked and your password gets stolen, if you have two-factor authentication on, it really doesn't mean anything. As long as you had good health and you didn't have that password shared anywhere else, then it's absolutely safe still. They're not going to be able to hack you through that method. So, but how is it actually implemented? Well, typically you're going to get prompted by the site to go through this enrollment process into two-factor authentication. It's going to require software that gets installed on either a tablet or a phone. You could also get the application for your computer, but again, it's not the safest thing to do, because if anyone was to hack your computer, they could get those two-factor authentication codes. Now, that's a specific use case and probably not very likely. But if you're really doing this to be security minded, you might as well do it correctly and put it on a tertiary device. So you've got the site you're kind of logging into, you've got the computer you're logging into that site from, and then you've got this third device that's going to hold that second password for you, and it's going to change it every 45 seconds. So you're going to install an application. Sometimes they're specific, like your bank may require that you download the Chase app with the Chase Authenticator or something like that. But most of the time, if they just give you a QR code, which is the squiggly lines inside of a box that typically resembles some type of weird target, if they present you with that, then you can use most likely whatever you have already installed on your phone if you've already installed things. So Authy and Google Authenticator are two of the top ones. And then there's also other ones that instead of entering codes, they negotiate all this in the back end, and they just prompt you with a yes or no. Are you trying to log in, basically, is what they prompt you with. So you get a push notification to the phone, and you hit yes or no instead of typing in numbers. So Microsoft Authenticator with Office 365 does that, as well as Duo for more of the enterprise level applications and login verification and stuff like that. So there are a few different ways of doing two-factor authentication. There's also another way that we haven't really talked about that's still a modern way of doing it, and it's actually using a piece of hardware that you plug into the machine when you need that secondary level of verification, but you can't lose that hardware either. So you're going to install software on a phone or a tablet. You're going to scan this code, or you're going to enter in the base code yourself. If the device doesn't have a camera, the camera's malfunctioning, you can put those codes in manually. And now you're going to be presented, every single time you log in, you'll be presented with this secondary login piece, which is going to be the number. Now, there are other types, but they are dated. But don't get me wrong, they're still very, very secure. Text messaging, It's very, very secure. It's dated just because if you ever were subject to kind of being a person that might have been targeted for a hack, it is likely that they've already kind of cloned your SIM card in your cell phone so they could see your text messages and kind of get this stuff. There's other reasons why they want to clone that card. And I don't want to be scary about that, but if you are a target, this is a very realistic thing. And it's a very inexpensive thing for someone to get that information and to make that clone. So just keep that in mind. If you are subject to some higher security and you have privy to some higher security things that people might want, and they might actually spend a little time to get, text messaging is not the best. Same thing with voice verification. Voice verification is somewhat similar in that it could be redirected, not the safest thing, but far better than not having it at all. Far better. Thousands of times better, if not hundreds of thousands of times better than not having any type of two-factor authentication. So why is two-factor authentication so important? Well, you have that rotating code. We kind of talked about the keylogger scenario. Really, if you're putting a password on it to protect it, why not go all the way and put two-factor authentication? Now, the biggest problem you're going to run into is not everyone supports it yet. And it's beyond me why even banks are not supporting this at the level. They'll do the callbacks and the text, but they're really not doing it at the level that kind of would define the current standards. So that might be your biggest issue. And the second one is they tend to hide it. So always go to the FAQ, go to your account area where normally you would do a password change and see if there's a little checkbox there that says enable two-factor authentication, because you're going to be worlds and worlds more secure by doing that. Now, why would you want to do this to every account? Well, we're going to talk about this in future episodes specifically about this, but hackers are all about leverage. So if they can leverage in on a single account, something that may not even seem important or you may not be able to connect the dots on, they're probably counting that you're not going to be able to connect the dots with that. They're going to be able to leverage that credential to get into something else or to get to something else of value. So just keep that in mind when you're kind of determining, gee, I don't want to enter in numbers for this one site. Just go for it and do it and call it a day. Now, there are a couple of caveats too that I want to discuss real quickly. And they're just to throw them out there to be aware of. I do not want to scare you or anything because, again, having this is hundreds of thousands of times more safe than not. But there are a few things you have to be aware of. Number one is if you have this on a phone or a tablet and that device breaks, and you don't have a subscription to some sort of service that keeps everything synced up, you're not going to be liking life because that two-factor authentication that was designed to keep people out is now going to be keeping you out because you're not going to have a way of creating those numbers. Now, when you sign up, when you enroll in these two-factor authentications, almost always there is a one-time code, and many of the implementations, you can still get that one-time code even after the fact, sometimes right through the app itself. But you want to get those one-time codes. You should document them, but you have to be very careful on how you document them because now you have the potential of exposing them just like your passwords. So I just wanted to throw that caveat out there, and it's actually two. Number one, to be aware that if your device fails, something happens, you have to factory reset, you lose it, etc. That stuff is gone. And now you're going to have a world of hurt getting stuff back and back re-enrolled in two-factor authentication unless you've documented those one-time codes. And if you do document those one-time codes, make sure those are secure. Even a piece of paper in a lockbox, maybe with some encrypted writing on what it's for, might be your best solution on that one. But I don't want that to deter you from using two-factor authentication because, again, it just brings so much more security to your logins. It's about you're going to hear this analogy over and over again in this series. It's about putting up speed bumps. The more speed bumps you put up, the less likely it is that they're going to stay on that bumpy road to hack you. So I hope you had just took that to heart. You got tremendous value out of it, and I hope you're going to go enable two-factor authentication on all of your applications shortly. All right, we will see you for the next tip/trick. Good night.